First of all, we should note that there was some 100 years between the first appearance of a label for a group of humanity called white people in 1681 and the time period when the Congress of this country met. There was 100 years that had passed. So that idea called white people had 100 years to grow and spread within the hearts of people, within relationships and interpersonal dynamics, within structures and institutions and practices. 100 years to spread. So here's what we know about this history. We know that science took the place of God as the primary authority during the Enlightenment. By the time the country is established and the Constitution is passed, we find ourselves in the 1700s, and it is at this moment where there is a major effort underway on the part of scientists, naturalists, to categorize the natural world. And so Carl Linnaeus, a Swiss botanist, physician, and scientist, he was really on the front end of that categorization. What Linnaeus did was said there were 5 different categories of humanity. And of course, he brought in views and descriptions, and his preferences are really clear within his descriptions, because you find those who look like him as clearly assigned qualities that are far more valuable. What's really key is that most of these scientists really gave scientific rationalization for the social order that already existed, giving, and we know that people in the South, in the United States, where slavery was foundational to their economic wealth, that they gave incredible credence and much thanks and appreciation to the scientists who helped to justify their suppression and oppression. And here we see the use of science to justify what at least in colonial North America began in colonial North America. The ruling elite who created white people and imposed white people on everybody, they didn't have to hand over $1 to do it. So their resources didn't decline 1 iota. So what they did instead was they created an entirely new bottom to colonial society and tossed people of African descent and members of native tribes within it. And so these people, who are now called white people, they didn't move up, at least initially with the laws, but at least they're not them. And so the creation and assertion of the human category called white people from its invention was used to divide laborers. And it worked also because this new class of laborers, now called white laborers, were imbued with the presumption of their superiority over people who are viewed as not white. And of course, that resulted in material and resources down the road, but at least initially, those who were among the ruling elite didn't have to hand over any of their resources at all. They were able, through law and through the assertion of this category called white people, they were able to restructure society so that there was a new bottom. The other function, which is really critical, is to realize that this new group of laborers called white people now, for the first time, had a thread that connected them to the ruling elite that didn't exist before. In fact, there was one thing that the 99% could always agree on, and it's that we hate them. But now, that 1% and the white people within the 99% now have a link with them, and that link is whiteness imbued with the presumption of its superiority. And that's why people today, many white people will feel a greater allegiance to a Paris Hilton or Donald Trump or anyone else who is white among the 1% than to our African American or Hispanic neighbor, even though our lived reality and our wealth and resources are, of course, far more familiar with those neighbors.